Captain Paul. The cell was cold, and the metal walls were slippery with dampness. With his wrists bound by handcuffs that sank into his skin, Holloway sat against the far corner. The faint, sickly green light from the floor was warped by the elongated shadows cast by the overhead lamps. The air in the cage where the other inmates were crowded smelled of perspiration, blood, and something else, something precise, something strange. The door to the holding chamber slid open. A sharp clang echoed as boots struck the metal floor, hissing. 3 extraterrestrial guards entered. They were sleek. The largest, an insectoid with a gleaming carapace, was distinguished by a ragged crimson band across his chest plate. He stepped forward. Paul's deep-set eyes locked onto the alien's feet. The creature blinked its translator online. Paul tensed. He knew what was coming. For the past 2 weeks, he had endured a relentless cycle of torture and interrogations. He was exhausted. The alien approached with visible impatience. Its mandibles twitched. It reached down, grabbed Paul by the collar, and hoisted him up effortlessly. Pain shot through his ribs, forcing a stifled moan from his throat. From the adjacent cell, a voice rasped, "Paul!" Adam Carlton, Paul's second-in-command, leaned against the bars. One of his eyes was swollen shut, but rage burned in the other. He would not let them break him. The alien leader clicked its mandibles in amusement. Then, without hesitation, it raised its pulse weapon. An energy bolt struck Adam square in the chest. Paul gasped. Adam collapsed onto the floor, motionless. A raw, guttural roar erupted from Paul's throat as he surged against his chains. The guard silenced him with a powerful blow. A deep, chilling voice reverberated through the room. The air stilled. A figure entered. Lord Varys Kai, the extraterrestrial general in charge of humanity's destruction. He was taller than the guards. His presence exuded an icy menace. His violet-hued eyes examined Paul with detached curiosity. Humans are fascinating, Kai mused as he stepped over Adam's lifeless body. You cling to hope, even when you have none, Paul spat. Kai smirked. You call this war? He scoffed. You're nothing but cowards, executing men in cold blood. Paul's breath was ragged. Kai's expression darkened. Mercy is a luxury of the victorious, and you are not the victors. He gestured at Adam's body. The guards seized Paul, dragged him toward the execution chamber. The walls were stained black with the remains of past victims. A raised platform stood in the center. The remaining human prisoners knelt before it, gaunt, weary, broken. Above them, a massive screen flickered to life. The insignia of the Galactic Empire blazed across it. This was more than an execution. It was a message. Paul's knees hit the floor. Lord Kai turned to the camera, his voice unwavering. Let this serve as a reminder to all who oppose us. A rifle pressed against Paul's head. His breathing slowed. His mind raced, searching for an opening. Any opening. Then, a thunderous explosion shook the facility. The lights flickered. Screams echoed from the corridors. The guards hesitated. Paul struck. A sharp twist. An elbow drove into an alien abdomen. The creature staggered. Paul lunged, seizing the fallen guard's weapon. One fluid motion. A pulse shot. Blue energy tore through the nearest executioner. Chaos erupted. Prisoners surged to their feet. Some scrambled for weapons. Others tackled the guards with raw desperation. Paul fought through the carnage, dropping another enemy. He sprinted for the security console, slamming his fist on the emergency override. The cuffs on the prisoners snapped open. More explosions rocked the station. Smoke curled through the passageways. Paul turned, rifle raised. Across the chaos, Kai's expression remained unreadable. This changes nothing, Captain, he said coolly, stepping toward the exit. Paul fired. The shot tore through empty space. Kai had already vanished, but it didn't matter, because outside, the war had begun. From the depths of space, thousands of ships surged forward. The combined fleets of Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies ignited their engines. At their core, a single dreadnought loomed. Black Nova, the pride of humanity's fleet. Plasma weapons hummed with anticipation. Paul Holloway, now standing on the command deck of the Valkyrie, inhaled deeply. His uniform bore the insignia of Omega Strike, humanity's first reprisal force. Admiral Voss's voice crackled over the comms. "We're green for attack." Paul exhaled. Fire. The human fleet surged forward. The rail guns roared. Tungsten slugs tore through the enemy station at near-light speed. Explosions erupted. Alien plating cracked. Enemy ships scrambled to respond. Too late. Paul watched as the Resolute, a smaller human frigate, was struck. A reactor breach. A firestorm. Then, silence. His jaw tightened. Ryan Drake's voice broke through his earpiece. 3 minutes until reinforcements arrive. They didn't have 3 minutes. "Omega Strike, prepare for insertion." Paul clenched his fists as the boarding pods launched. A violent impact. The hull trembled. The station's corridors erupted in blaster fire. Emerald streaks of plasma cut through the air. Paul ducked, returning. Fire. The first attacker dropped. Behind him, James Calloway stormed forward, his massive frame obliterating enemy lines with heavy repeater fire. Victor Hale lobbed a grenade down the corridor. A deafening explosion sent alien limbs flying. They pushed forward, step by brutal step. Through smoke and blood, they reached the central control hub. Inside, an alien officer trembled. Paul leveled his rifle. A single shot. The creature collapsed. Ryan hacked the system. The station shook as the human warships unleashed their full might. The last line of defense collapsed. Enemy forces broke. Some fled. Others fought to the death. Paul stood amid the wreckage, his rifle lowered. This was only the beginning. Hours later, the station was nothing but debris, but the war was far from over. From the bridge of Predator, Admiral Jonathan Voss observed the battle. This was not a conquest. It was extermination. The Empire retaliated. Entire human colonies were erased. On Epsilon Prime, Marcus Caldwell led the ground forces. The city was ruins. Bodies littered the streets. There were no more treaties, no more negotiations. Humanity had forged new weapons from its own suffering. Paul, Holloway, and Omega Strike became legendary. Striking from the shadows, they shattered the Empire's leadership. And then, a discovery, a flotilla carrying classified transmissions. Aboard it, Prince Cale Varn, the heir to the Galactic Empire. Capturing him would shatter the Empire. The final war had begun. Paul stood inside the dropship as it descended toward Zer, the Imperial capital. Through the viewport, the alien metropolis, sprawled beneath a violet sky, towering spires, sky bridges, security outposts. At the center, the Royal Citadel, their target. Paul tightened his grip on his weapon. The time for mercy had passed. Now it was humanity's turn to strike. The checkpoint was filled with deafening silence. Shots rang out, and in a matter of seconds, the guards were lying down, their blood pooling on the ground. Ryan touched his cool metal weapon. They were moving on to Phase 2. They traveled down service tunnels, farther into the city to evade notice. The closer they arrived at the palace, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, and the more tension coiled around them. Finally, with each step weighing heavier than the last, the Citadel's entryway became visible. It was protected by a massive gate made of pure Trium alloy, shimmering under the artificial light of the Zer sky. It wasn't just a security measure. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their guns sizzling with bioelectric charge. Knowing someone was approaching, Victor huddled next to the gate and prepared a string of high-yield charges along its base. Paul looked over the skyline. No alarms yet. This will draw their attention, he muttered. The gate split the air with a deep, reverberating boom after a subdued thump. Molten slag erupted across the entrance as the metal folded inward. Guards yelled in their native tongue, scrambling to react. But Omega Strike Team was already rushing in. Ryan surged forward, killing the first sentry Calloway with a precise headshot. A walking cloud of destruction, suppressive fire ripped through enemy lines, tearing through anything in its path. Paul moved with unwavering focus, locating targets before they could react. Victor was a phantom, scuttling amid the commotion, planting charges to cut off reinforcements. They pushed deeper into the citadel, ruthlessly navigating corridors twisted in elaborate designs meant to trick trespassers. But Paul had spent weeks studying the schematics. He knew every nook and cranny. At the end of the hallway stood a reinforced blast door with a security panel. "This is it," Ryan mumbled, working rapidly to illuminate the encrypted alien script. They took a moment to overcome the lock, but in their haste, they didn't check the ceiling above. The ceiling exploded in a shower of flames as Praetorian warriors dropped down, weapons drawn from concealed compartments. The hallway became a death trap. Paul hid behind cover as plasma fire scorched the walls. Calloway yelled, dropping 2 enemies as rounds sizzled through the air. Then he moaned in pain, hit in the shoulder. Paul clenched his teeth and rolled a flash grenade toward the enemy line. It exploded in a dazzling white flash, giving them just enough time. The blast door slid open. "Move!" Paul barked, hauling Calloway across the threshold. Victor set off a charge, collapsing the entrance behind them. Beyond, silence. Prince KVN stood near the center of the royal chamber, his gaze steady as he watched the ruined doorway. He was tall, his robe glistening with golden embroidery, violet-hued skin adorned with elaborate ceremonial etchings. But his deep, unwavering eyes lacked the haughtiness Paul had anticipated. He did not